Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I will be glad to call our Nash County Board of Commissioners meeting to order at this time for June the 17th at 1:30 p.m. It's customary for us to begin our meetings with a prayer by a commissioner. During this time, you're welcome to join us in this prayer. You're welcome to have your own individual prayer if you'd like to use that time, or possibly a moment of silence. So at this time, I will call on Miss Sue Leggett to lead us in our invocation.
Stand. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this beautiful day. We give thanks for all of the blessings that you provide us daily. Please be with us today as we gather to do the business of Nash County. We ask for wisdom, knowledge, and grace. All of these things we ask in your holy and precious name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Leggett. We're now on item 3 on our agenda, and we are very pleased to welcome our partner in the town of Nashville, the town of Nashville officials. And reason is we have a new town manager. And at this time, I'll call on our manager, Mr. Z. Lamb, to do the introduction and introduce the other guests that come with him.
Okay. It's a pleasure to be able to introduce to the board and all of you the new town manager of Nashville, Randy Lansing. He comes, there he is. He comes to us from Iowa, right?
Yes.
And he and I have met in the last couple weeks, and we look forward to working with you and your staff. I know the county, being the county seat, we always try to work closely with Nashville, and we look forward to working with you. I think with them are Councilmember Taylor and Councilmember Taylor. Who else? Taylor Square, yeah.
They were assigned to me, so I got to the right place on
Yeah.
time.
Sound like you
Yeah.
brought 2 lawyers with you to me, Taylor and Taylor. Yes, sir.
Taylor and Taylor. But if you have anything to say,
Well, just, it's a pleasure being here in Nashville, Nash County. And coming from Iowa, it's good to get out of the cold weather for a while. I'll probably be changing my words shortly about that, but
yeah.
until then. So I've been a town manager for about 25 years. This is the 3rd town that I'm working for. I started out in East Dubuque, Illinois, and Cascade, Iowa, and then my latest was Garner, Iowa. And sometimes Garner, Iowa got phone calls from people in Garner, North Carolina about their garbage not being picked up, about swim lessons. And we had to inform them, well, which state were you calling from? Garner. So it was interesting.
We'll get ready for Nashville.
Not the grand old opera.
I think hotel and scouts have sought me out for my singing ability, that's for sure. So I look forward to working with the commission and moving Nash County forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here today. The next item on our agenda is a presentation about an idea I'm thinking about a drug court for Nash County, which I am somewhat familiar with them in some other counties in the state, and I'm very excited to hear what we're gonna hear about this today. And of course, to make that presentation, we have Honorable Judge Anthony Brown, Tony Brown to me. Tony and I are classmates from Northern Nash High School. Tony, you want me to reveal the year, or you want to keep that a secret? It's 1970. We started at Northern Nash in '66, the year it opened, and we're the first graduating class that had attended there 4 years. And I'm making the assumption Tony went there 4 years. I'm not sure of that.
I actually spent most of my time at Nash Central.
Nash
before
Central.
We went to North.
Okay, all right. But anyway, we are pleased to have Tony with us today, and we are also pleased to be a graduate team from a local high school here close to Nashville. And Tony, I'll just turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You can welcome you to the podium if you like.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the commission and other guests here today. As the chairman said, I'm Anthony W. Brown, better known around the county as Tony Brown. I'm one of your district court judges. I'm accompanied here today by Ms. Jan Norwood, who's seated down on my right. She is the attorney for the Nash County Department of Social Services. I'm in the process of starting a family drug treatment court for Nash County. I don't know how many of you are familiar with drug treatment courts. The chairman said he is. But I left a copy of North Carolina's general statutes, which outline the framework for such courts. Now, of course, the state no longer provides funding for these courts, so not all of the information that was contained in that handout is currently applicable. You are all aware of the scourge of illicit drugs in our society. Opiates, opioids, methamphetamines, alcohol, and all the rest are exacting a tremendous, devastating, and often deadly toll here in our local area. Well, let me let you in on something that you may or may not already know. Drugs is not a spectator sport. Eventually, the whole family gets to play. Attorney Norwood and I, along with other judges, see case after case where children, often as young as newborns, are adversely affected by the substance abuse of their parents. The ability to properly parent is impaired. The reality is that the use of these substances becomes overwhelming and is more important than children, family, friends, jobs, or even freedom. I've spent several weeks studying and being instructed on the effects of drugs, to include alcohol, on the human brain. Because the brain is altered by the use of these substances, the only way to effectively reverse the harmful effects and behaviors associated with the drug use is to provide treatment to the user to reverse the negative effects on the brain. Now, I'm passionate about starting a drug court limited to Nash County residents who, as parents or guardians, are in danger of losing custody of their children due to neglect or abuse charges where drugs and or alcohol use is a contributing factor to the behaviors which give rise to the charges. Ms. Norwood and the director of the Department of Social Services, who cannot be here today, she has some other obligations, but she's on board with this plan, have provided me with some statistics. In 2015, this is Nash County, 11 families had cases in the juvenile court where substance abuse was an underlying factor in their abusive or neglective behavior, which caused them to face the possibility of losing their children. 19 children were impacted. In 2016, the numbers were 15 families with 24 children impacted. In 2017, there were 11 families and 19 children, and in 2018, 15 families and 21 children were adversely impacted. Research has shown that using the power of the court to change motivation is one of the most effective, if not the most effective, ways of bringing about change in the people's lives. Their children certainly deserve better. Of course, a possible byproduct of a treatment court is a reduction in crime and its consequences. The drug court provides a continuum of evidence-based, affordable care to meet the needs of the drug treatment court participant. We'll utilize counseling, medical-assisted therapies, group therapy sessions, mental health services, and judge-ordered incentives and sanctions where deemed appropriate. Also, educational and vocational support and medical care support. It is very intensive and it's invasive. It would meet every other week with drug and alcohol testing conducted at random, but not less than 2 to 3 times per week. You heard the chairman say that he's familiar with drug courts operating in other counties. Some are already, these are just family drug treatment courts. They are already in operation in Buncombe County, Chatham County and that District 15B, Cumberland County, Halifax County and the other counties in that district, Lenoir County, which includes the Wayne County area, Mecklenburg County, Orange County, and Robeson County. I've talked with a lot of those people. I've been to conferences and met with them. I've sat down and had extensive conversations with the coordinators in Robertson County and in Lenoir County, and they've been invaluable to me. As a matter of fact, a young lady named Tiffany Jones, who was the coordinator in Wayne and Lenoir County, was set to be with me when we thought we might be on the agenda at an earlier date, but she wasn't able to be here today. She would have been here. She's been like a right hand and a security blanket for me. But I've done my homework. About 3 weeks ago, I went to a seminar, a 4-day seminar rather, in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that spent a lot of time going in depth on the effects on the brain of drugs. And it's really scary. And I'll tell you, I don't know if you know, when you talk about different drugs and which ones are the most deadly, anybody have an idea? I won't ask you to answer, but methamphetamines, that is the most dangerous. Drugs cause the brain to, and I won't do a lot of scientific talking, but it causes the brain to release a substance called dopamine. Dopamine is something that we really use that helps us get pleasure, helps us to learn. Well, all of them cause the release of dopamine, but methamphetamines does something else. It goes into the brain, changes the DNA so that the brain will not release dopamine unless it gets methamphetamine. Now, how insidious is that? Research has shown that using the power of the court to change motivation is one of the most effective, if not the most effective way of bringing about change in these people's lives. It is anticipated that our participants would spend at least 12 months in the drug court, which would meet, as I said, once every 2 weeks. Now, I've spoken to Dave Peterson, who is the regional director of Trillium, which services this area, and he's provided me with a list of substance abuse treatment providers available in this area, and we will obviously avail ourselves of them. He even set them out as to which ones are Medicaid funded or which ones are state funded. Now, why am I here? The nuts and bolts of starting a court. As I said, the state of North Carolina does not provide funding. And before you start to worry, I'm not asking for funding. But I will be asking for grants. There are several nonprofit organizations and other organizations that provide funding for drug treatment courts. They understand the importance of it. But your county commissions have to be the people who sign off on the grant requests, and rightfully so. Tony Brown's not going to be the guy asking for the money, and he's not going to be the person overseeing the spending. The county would have to oversee how the money is spent. The largest expenditure is paying for the coordinator, who is the individual who really makes the program go, in addition to the judge. Now, of course, if you have some extra money, well, I'm sure it could be utilized too. Because, as I said, the main expenditure is for the coordinator. There are also expenditures for drug testing kits and that sort of thing. I've already talked with our clerk of court, and she is on board with this. That's basically what I have. If anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions from commissioners at this time?
Yes, you said that Halifax County was the closest geographic county to us?
That is correct. Yes, it is.
As one of these programs?
Yes. Yes, they do.
I don't know, I see a twofold thing here. This is good. Along with that, we got to figure out a way to stop the flow of these drugs, because those that'll bring them in also recruit people
Oh,
to
sure.
use them.
Sure.
And we either, this term, we can get them off the street and get them from manufacturing and black marketing and selling drugs, especially this opioid.
Well,
Because that's where it has gone now. It's a black market thing. See, when you start cracking down on the medical profession, then people start black marketing and making it. And that may not be the best thing. It may be even worse than what they were having before. So, has there been any thought of the two working together?
well, as I indicated, my focus right now is very narrow, and it's on drug treatment, and my main concern is the children. as I said, through no fault of their own, they find themselves in these situations. But a possible byproduct of a drug treatment court is, obviously, if you get a parent straightened out, then hopefully the goal is to make this person free of the use of illicit drugs, whether they're illegal or legal, whether they're in the black market or whether they come from the pharmacy. So that's a possible byproduct. But right now, my focus is narrow. Now, there are some other drug treatment courts around the state. Some are in the criminal courts. Some are just specific for DWI offenders and that sort of thing. But right now, my focus is on the children and the family.
Other questions? Judge Brown, do you have an idea what the total budget to run this program might be?
I've talked with the other coordinators, and the figure that keeps coming up is about $100,000. Yes.
And do you feel that that amount of grants are available?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I do.
And are some of those grants through Trillium, who we are now
No,
with?
no, Trillium would provide the treatment providers
Gotcha.
and take care of that. No, Z. Smith Reynolds and that sort of organization, those are the people that you request grant money from. And just so you know, they don't ask for matching money from the counties.
So generally some.
But they
some
do
type of-
require that the county provide the oversight.
Sure, and we understand that. We don't see that as been an issue at all. So they're generally 501 type
That's correct. Yes, sir.
entities that provide these type.
That is
services.
correct.
Okay. And I'm assuming that our Superior Court judge is okay with what we're doing here?
I have not talked with him because he doesn't have any involvement in the family court.
That's right.
And he doesn't want any
Yeah, I got
Probably,
you.
I'm not gonna speak for him, but chances are he's got his plate full.
Gotcha.
But I have spoken with the district attorney because hopefully this would, again, have a positive effect in lighten his caseload, and he thinks it's a great idea.
Sure think so. Other questions? Staff have any questions?
You said no state funding any longer. There's not a prohibition on the Governor's Crime Commission providing funds, is there? Have they been given any
I've not
grants?
talked with anyone who's received any money from the state. I don't know.
Okay,
If it's a possibility, I'll be glad to ask him.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
I will leave you with this. You've heard it said, a lot of this obviously depends on the participant wanting help.
Sure.
And you've heard it said that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But I tell you what you can do. We're in a agrarian area. You can catch him when he's real thirsty and carry him and show him the water and let him make his decision. That's what we're talking about.
What can the commissioner's next step be?
If you
Be
will-
ready to hear from you, or tell me what to do?
If you will agree to sign off on the grant requests, and I believe you have someone who helps write grants, if that person could collaborate with me if they had time, that would be great. But just sign off on the grant request and be ready to make sure that the funds are properly administered.
Right. Well, what do you need for us to do that?
Just direct staff to work with Ms. McGee and Judge Brown and
Okay.
go forward.
Do you need a motion for that, or consensus for that? Tell me what you need.
I think a motion would be good.
Mr. Chairman, I move that our staff, county staff, work with Judge Brown in putting together grant proposals.
Second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Sir, I think you got what you asked for today.
Thank you very much, and on behalf of the children of this county, I thank you very
Yes, sir.
much.
Thank
Let us
you.
know what else we can do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for being here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda would be item number 5, which is an airport update. I kinda heard this presentation a couple of months ago, I guess, over in Rocky Mount, and I thought it would be something that our commissioners certainly would be interested in. So, at this time, I will turn it over to whoever is gonna lead this.
Well, just a brief opening.
Mullins?
Mr. Chairman, my name's Charles Mullen. I'm the Nash County appointee to the Rocky Mount Wilson Airport Board. And before Dion gives you a little brief update, on behalf of Gary Hodges, who's a city representative, and the ones from Edgecombe County, Wilson County City, and the Rocky Mount, we want to thank y'all for what you've done in the past and continuing to do. I think you will be pleasantly surprised at the end of this summer when our airport is renovated and our runway is redone, and we become definitely, without question, a world-class airport right here in Rocky Mount. So this is going to be something that I think y'all are going to be very proud of, and our commitment is to, we're changing things, making things better for the community, making things better for our airport, and becoming more self-sustaining. So that'll be a plus, I think, for the county and those supporting sponsors. So Mr. Dion Valenti is going to give you a little update now, and I appreciate y'all letting us do this.
Thank you, Mr. Muller. Yeah, I want you to come up to the podium, and I think Jonathan could do your presentation a little bit better from that standpoint. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Davis, and members of the commission, distinguished guests. Appreciate you inviting me here. I'm delighted to be before you today and give you an update on our airport here, Rocky Mount Wilson Regional Airport. A lot of things are happening, and I think it's worthy of bringing that new information to you and keeping you updated on how the money's being spent and what's going on and what kind of changes you can expect. And without any further ado, I'd like to direct your attention to this little presentation I have that Chairman Davis alluded to. I did recently for City of Rocky Mount. It went over pretty good, but we'll see how good it goes over today. But I've made some updates to it because things are just happening so fast out there. It's hard to keep up with. My head is kind of spinning, but it's in a good way. So I'll make sure I got this thing working. Okay. All right, so the economy, as you know, is doing really good, and aviation is the spearhead of the economy right now. Every time the economy is doing good, you see the effects in aviation immediately, and vice versa. Once the economy starts getting weak, first thing that happens is aviation starts indicating that through downturns in aviation. But right now, we are strong, and because of that, there is a brand new report out from the State Division of Aviation, worked in conjunction with North Carolina State University and the Institute of Transportation Research and Engineering, and they did a economic impact study on aviation across the state, and the numbers are huge. It's no surprise to me that we're starting to feel the effects here. A lot of our partners in the area are utilizing the airport and calling us about future use, and new tenants are interested in coming here. And it's just a lot of business going on, a lot of commercial, a lot of industrial partners are interested in the airport, and it's having profound effects. And fortunately, I believe we're ahead of the curve in being prepared for the next phase of demand for the airport. And we've got a lot of things going on at the airport. It serves a lot of customers, and there's a lot happening. But I thought you'd like to know, first of all, what kind of economic numbers are driving the new business at the airport. And here's just a snapshot of across the state. We're talking 52 million in economic impact from aviation. That's a big number. 307 jobs, 307 million jobs. 1,000 jobs, yeah, excuse me, and 12.6 billion in personal income. 2.2 billion in state and local tax revenue. And that's 2017 airport data. But what does that mean here locally? The numbers they gave us this year, and these are conservative numbers just based on surveys that were actually responded to by our partners, 69.7 million in economic output from this airport alone. 450 jobs, either directly or indirectly related to the airport, and 25.9 million in personal income from the workers in those jobs. And that's 2.9 million in state and local tax revenues. And that's the numbers they gave me from the state for Rocky Mount Wilson Regional Airport, and I thought they were pretty impressive. They're up significantly from the last time they did this study in 2016. Here's a snapshot of our operating budget from 2017. We completed our audit for it. Our next audit is due here at the end of June. But these are the numbers from 2017, and they are twice the numbers as the previous year. And the next round of numbers will be 3 times as much. We have a transition plan in place that the Airport Authority is working through, and we're about halfway there. A lot of these items we've already checked off or are in the process of doing, but completing the strategic master plan is the first on the list right there. It's the first thing we endeavored to do to help guide us through this process. We've been going around lobbying state and federal government for local support, and that's been pretty successful thus far. And we're implementing terminal area development as we speak. We're looking at friendly local land acquisition for the contiguous property on the airport, and we've made one move with your help already with that. The county has acquired a piece of land right there at the terminal area. And we're working real hard to reduce the subsidies on the airport from our local partners and turn that into, our books from red to black at the airport and make it a self-sustaining business. We're increasing our operations in our based aircraft. We're looking at doubling our based aircraft here in the next year, which helps a lot with that revenue. We're promoting fuel sales through low cost and volume by taking over the FBO operations at the airport so that the airport can realize those revenues instead of the current FBO. We're working on a collaborative effort to work in partnership with our local community colleges to help with this flight training demand that's out there right now. And we're going to start marketing our business plan, especially the industrial portion of it. And then we're going to keep reviewing this and revising it as we go. There's a look at the current projects that are happening right now, and I think you'd be surprised at some of the numbers, but this is just within the last few years. We just recently completed that signage and taxiway lighting project. $300,000 on our drafted airport strategic master plan that's almost finished. We were awarded another $340,000 for our underground fuel and mitigation project, and we received a $300,000 award for our self-serve fuel farm project. $3.5 million from the DOT on a strategic transportation initiative, 100% funded for that T-hangar and taxiway project that we talked about many times. And then the big one there was that $14.8 million award from the state and federal government, which we contributed 10% towards as a collaborative effort from all 3 counties in both cities. Here's a look at what our strategic master plan, airport layout plan looks like. It's basically a book and a set of plans, and this is the first sheet on the set of plans, and it shows the future of the airport and all its existing conditions. The last time this was updated was back in 2006, and they expect us to update this every 3 to 10 years, so it's due. They funded 90% of it, so they help us to make this happen. I'm talking about the Division of Aviation, of course. The Division of Aviation here acts as the FAA in North Carolina since it's a block grant state. So they review it initially, and then they send it up with their blessings to the district office in Memphis. Here's a look at our pavement rehabilitation project. This is just a plan view. It's currently under construction. Phase 1 is, and that's the big part. That's the runway and the apron. And it's closed, 90-day closure. It's scheduled to open back up again on the 25th of July, which we are highly anticipating. And the whole thing will be completed in December. So the big part of it, the runway and the apron, is being done first, and they're on a tight schedule to get that accomplished so we can open the airport back up to operations again, and they'll finish the rest of it after that. There's just a glimpse at the funding profile for it. Allega was the apparent low bidder and has started work. They're out of Ohio, and they've gone wide open on this project, and they're currently on schedule and under budget. But it was a joint effort of funding from everybody, and it took a lot of communication and a lot of sharing of ideas to get to this point, but we're already heavily into phase 1, and phase 2 through 5 is coming up shortly. Here's a look, an aerial view of the area that we're talking about right there, and you can see the runway has been removed, and they started working on the base course. You can't see it yet, but the area between the two aprons is bare right now, and they're filling that in with a new apron. So that's just a glimpse of the start of the project. Here is some drone footage that Mr. Gary Hodges took of the project, and I don't know if we can hit play on that or not. Is that possible? Right there, there you go. Gary's got his own drone, and he brought it out there to the airport during construction, and got some good aerial view of what's going on, and you can see it kind of pans around what's happening. That's the apron that they're working on right there. You can see the sedimentation and the erosion control measures in place, and you can see where they've been working on the geometry of the taxiway and removed the asphalt from the runway. In the background there is the asphalt plant that they built on site. So there's a lot of equipment out there, there's a lot of personnel, and they're just going hard at it to get this job done and get done on time. Fortunately, we've been blessed with a lot of really good weather, so we've had no weather delays, equipment delays, no personnel delays, and fortunately, no funding delays, which is what keeps everything moving, actually. Okay, here's a picture of the on-site asphalt plant, which was a major contributing factor to why this contractor won this bid. They have their own mobile asphalt plant that they bring in on semi-tractor trailers and put in place within less than 2 weeks, had that thing up and running. And of course, it's operating now, batching asphalt and loading up trucks, and there's a picture of one of the trucks getting loaded there, but it's quite a sight to see out there. They got all their aggregate stockpiled up there, and they're able to just keep right on moving without having to haul it from across the county, which is a benefit, an unseen benefit, that you don't have all these dump trucks moving up and down the highway in front of the airport and tearing it up, and then we end up having to repave it next year.
With all this going on, there's no air service now.
I'm sorry?
I said with all the plant rehabilitation projects that's going on, no airplanes can come in or go out now.
Right, the airport's closed until we open that runway back up again at the end of July. Yes, sir.
Except helicopter traffic.
Yeah, there is still, our emergency helicopters are still operating out of there. They don't need the runway. So Vidant is still responding 24/7. That's a great question. There's a look at the staging area where they started moving their equipment in when they first started the project. That's the sheep's foot roller right there. They use that when they're doing the stabilization on that old runway. There's a picture of the milling operation that they did. They scraped off 4 inches of the existing asphalt and grinded it all up and stockpiled it, and we use that for our new perimeter road. And they also used it for their laydown area, and they also used it for the asphalt plant. So instead of hauling all that material off, we were able to reuse it, which saved us a lot of money. There's a look at some of the drainage upgrades. We got a lot of drainage facilities on that airport. It's 500 acres, and it's got to be drained and dry all the whole time. So there's lots of ditches out there. So we're upgrading all of the drainage pipes and all the crossings as we go. Here's a look at the threshold area. We shared this project with the FAA because they're completing their $3.5 million approach lighting project at the same time, and we were able to coordinate those two schedules so that we didn't have to build 2 thresholds. So we got to share the cost instead of paying for the whole thing. Here's a look at the pulverizing equipment that they use, and they had 2 of those machines out there. They do a great job of destroying the runway, and whatever is there, they pulverize, they mix together the rock, remaining asphalt, and sand beneath it, and then they go back and shoot it with cement and water and make a new concrete base out of what's there. So it's basically recycling the old runway. It's just, they've been doing this with DOT highways for about a decade, but the FAA was slow to accept this process for airports for good reason. They wanted to study it more and find out if it was going to be acceptable in the long run. And we were one of the first airports to have a modification to standard to have this done for runways that supported aircraft over 100,000 pounds. Here is some more drone footage from Mr. Hodges. If we can hit a play button on there, you can actually see the reclamation process while it's happening, and you can see the roller, and then that's the cement truck, and it's connected to the stabilization equipment, and they're going through the existing base course and stabilizing it with that cement as they go. And it's a pretty slow process. It took them many weeks to get it done, but they did a fantastic job. In my whole career in engineering, it's the nicest base course I've ever seen. And they employed some different types of strategies and equipment on this particular job that made it come out really good. And we're really glad about this contractor having this proactive approach. They've done an excellent job, and we're really satisfied with all the numbers. Density, moisture, strength have all come in within targets. And that was the most important thing about this project, is the base course, and it's been a home run. So I'm very satisfied as an engineer and airport director to report to you that we will have a very strong runway going forward. They've started paving last week. They do one whole lane at a time. Nice thing about that is they're able to do it because they have that on-site asphalt plant. So they don't have any delays in materials. They're able to do the entire lane, the entire 7,100-foot lane at once. So all we have is longitudinal joints to work with, no transverse joints on the runway, which is a big deal in the airport world. But for the sake of this picture, this is just a look at how they're doing it. They got their rollers out there, and they're making a really nice product out there. And we've got full-time inspection and quality assurance as they go along with quality control. And it's just a full-time job of inspection of core samples for this asphalt to make sure it's absolutely perfect when they're done. Because we want it to serve us for decades, and we just can't afford to have an inferior product. So I'm very happy to report that it's going very well so far. One of the helicopter operators sent me this picture the other day. One of the Vidant helicopter pilots is a look at the paving process that's going on out there on runway 422. And it's like I was alluding to before, the weather has just made this possible to keep it moving and keep us on schedule. And the contractor has done an excellent job of managing the project. The owner is personally on site superintending the project with his A-team. So it's really quite refreshing to have so many dedicated personnel on this project, making sure that it comes out good. I'm very confident that the next time I come back to report to you, when this runway is done and we're open for business, that we have a fantastic final product in hand.
Well, was the first runway cement?
No, sir, it was asphalt.
It was asphalt. I mean, reading out was 2 different colors up there, asphalt looked like cement.
Yeah, what you saw before is the base course, and it's a cement base course.
Oh, okay.
It's called FDR. Very strong, but not too strong, so it doesn't cause cracking come through the asphalt. I also alluded earlier to this new T-hanger and taxi lane project. That's been bid and it's been awarded to PLT Construction out of Wilson. That'll start next month. We have our pre-construction conference tomorrow. You can see here, we're going to be adding 23 new T-hangers over here in this undeveloped portion of the airport where it's currently all wooded right now. Up there in the upper left-hand corner is where our old fuel farm used to be. It was a subsurface fuel farm that's been there since 1969, 70. Exxon ran. And I'm glad to report that we'll be digging that up, and that area right there will be our new sedimentation basin for this project. So it's kind of ironic that we're digging up an old fuel farm, and that's where we're putting in our environmental control. It's really nice to know. Here's a look at what our new self-serve fuel farm is going to look like out there on the ramp. We'll be able to deliver fuel 24/7 to both Jet A and Avgas customers. Down there in the bottom left corner is a look at our old fuel farm that was underground. It had served its useful service life, and its time had come to be removed. But that project is anticipated to start here shortly, next month. That'll be a fast project, and we'll have that old one out, and we'll put those new ones in, and we'll be ready to go and up for business. Part of that project is to add an additional 20,000 gallon Jet A tank to our already existing above ground fuel farm, which will help with our volume and capacity. Here is a look at our future terminal area expansion proposal that's part of our strategic master plan, and it shows quite a bit of aggressive growth around the terminal area in the future. One of the biggest things in airports nowadays is ramp space. When you have a lot of planes and they're bigger, they need places to park. So we've got an eye to the future on how we can deal with that in the next 5 to 10 years. Here's a look at what we're proposing as far as our corporate area development to the north. We're segregating all of our light general aviation aircraft to the south and all our corporate aircraft, which are mainly turbine aircraft, to the north. And this is the area that we'd like to develop for that. Up at the northern end of the taxiway delta. Here's a look at a artist rendition of they came up with about 7 different proposals for a new terminal expansion project. In order to make new ramp space, we'd have to demolish that old terminal building and build a new terminal building behind it, so that we'd had uninterrupted service and we'd be able to accommodate more aircraft out there. But this is one of the proposals that the architects rendered. They tried to reflect some of the history of the area. I sent them out on a mission down to downtown Rocky Mount in Nashville to look at the buildings and look at some of the history and try to come up with ideas that would sink into our community better. And that was one of them. Here's a look at the current preliminary proposal that we presented to the state last week regarding the possibility of funding a feasibility study into an industrial aviation park on the southeast side of the airport that could serve our industrial customers in the future. It would involve looking closely at the possibility of providing a railroad spur off the CSX line and connect up to their multimodal hub up there in the northern part of the county. And so we truly have a multimodal hub there, aviation, trucking, and railroad. But there's no sense in spending good money on something that's not feasible, so we asked for help from the state to do a proper study and get some good data first before we present any proposals. But there is definitely a demand for it, and we know that. We've seen other airports, other general aviation airports that started this process about 10 years ago, and they've come to fruition. And for example, I'll give you an example. Elizabethtown has got a nice aviation industrial park on the other side of their GA terminal and is already maxed out already. And there's a look at one of the charter jets that came in, 727-200. It's picking up freight from FedEx. And that's what you can expect to see a lot more of after the airport opens in August. They are currently sending all this jet traffic down to Greenville, and they much rather have it here where it's closer. But I'm open to any questions.
That was one of the questions I wrote down that I was gonna ask.
The runway is thick enough to handle those big cargo jets coming in, or even passenger jets.
Yes, we fought hard with the Division of Aviation to maintain the width of that runway to 150 feet. They had suggested to narrow it down to 100 feet to save money. And we proposed that our next critical aircraft was a 727-200, and that would need a 150-foot wide runway. We were just shy of the 500 operations a year necessary to justify it, so they stuck their neck out and let us have it. I think we made a convincing argument with all the pictures we had.
Other questions?
Yeah, in the paving, as they mix the concrete and asphalt, the state or the federal government, they have someone there testing to make sure that everything was, the requirements and everything were met as far as the ingredients that went into.
Contractors required to have their own quality control staff. And then we have a representative project manager on site, and we do a quality assurance testing behind the contractor. That's required as an obligation for all federal contracts.
That hadn't always been the case, has it?
As long as I've been in the business, it has. It's about 20 years.
Other question? Dion, I've always felt like, that our airport, here in Nash County, having 4 partners, actually ourselves and 4 other partners, but, and then looking at it, we have a fixed base operator that has been there an extremely long time, and I'm not sure what that person's, long-term outlook is. I've heard thoughts that, there may not be a plan in place. I'm not really sure of that, but just looking forward, I'm always concerned about that particular aspect of it. The fixed base operator is always a very important part of it and what our future plan, and I'm not looking at an answer today, but as it relates to that fixed base operator, where that part will be headed, is that in our long-range plan? And then also our long-range plan of having the number of partners we have in the airport, is it a item that has been looked at in the long-term plan? Will it continue to have as many partners as we had in the past, or do we have another thought that maybe at some point it may be less partners involved and possibly a airport owned by Nash County? And I'm not gonna ask for an answer on that, but it's just some thoughts that I've had. It seems to sometimes be an impediment as we try to improve that airport. Some of our partners' interests seem to have been more fixed in other airports. And of course, in Nash County, our total interest is involved in that particular airport. And then, of course, it all is located currently in Nash County, and therefore the tax revenue from what is housed there comes to Nash County, which sometimes is an item that comes up for discussion. So at some point, I'd just like to know where all of those questions kind of fall in your long-term plan, but certainly not today.
Understood?
Okay. Other thoughts? Mr. Belfield?
Oh, I was just gonna say, maybe you can answer this, but isn't it, I mean, in order to develop an airport, it has to be approved by the Federal Aviation Commission, right? What I'm thinking about, based on Commissioner Davis's comments and thoughts there, you can't just establish an airport without being approved, and then they got to be, what, so many distance apart, air traffic and control and all that?
So, just trying to understand your question, but yes, the FAA and the state work very closely with us on the development of the airport. They're the ones who are doing all the funding. They approve all of our requests. And as far as the second part of your question, I don't have an answer for that now.
Well, I'm thinking in terms of maybe some of the other counties, say like maybe Edgecombe or Wilson say, well, we want an airport of our, that's solely our own rather than being regional.
They do, they have their own airport over there.
Can they, I know it's a little small one over there, but I'm thinking about developing one similar.
The federal government will only support airports that are over 25 miles apart.
Well, which limits. And that makes sense because you have too many of them around, everybody want their own, and you have more catastrophes and you can take care of.
Other questions, comments? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate y'all being here today. Anything else, Gary? Charles?
I'm very excited about what's going on. We're on the precipice of tremendous expansion and a lot of growth. And the federal government and the state government, aviation, is viewing our airport very uniquely. Our position between New York and Miami makes us an excellent refueling stop, hence the reason our FBO operation, fueling operation, is going under airport authority as opposed to a private individual. And we're going to ramp up the number of aircraft that we've got approximately 36,000 takeoffs and landings a year now. Most people don't realize we're that busy. We got 727 freighters. Cummins Diesel has indicated that they're ramping up their number of shipments dramatically. Those types of jets are going to be more frequently out there. That with the with the additional fueling, with the larger base operation, and the fact that we're moving and become self-sufficient, there is tremendous growth here. I foresee in the very near future that this airport, in conjunction with the Kinston Global Transport Authority, they're taking care of big things. I see us being a regional distribution center, freight, manufacturing, and that potential industrial center going to the southeast, and as I call it, the east side of the airport, opposite 97. It is tremendous. We're literally, we're going to see tremendous growth, and we have a tremendously valuable asset that the county has and our region has. So I'm very excited. And as I tell everybody else, and as I did DOT last week, I'm pulling out the pom-poms. Sometimes you need some of this excitement and underscored with hard data, and having the excitement and going for, and being forward-thinking. So I'm very excited. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Yes, sir.
Well, I am too. And ever since I've been on this board, which is 21 years, I often bring up, when are we gonna get started with improving Rocky Mount Wilson Airport so we can really have some economic development growth here in the area.
That runway was 50 years old today, this year.
And I was, every time I brought it up, until here recently, that's the airport authority's responsibility.
Well, we're
But
very
now
fortunate.
we seem that we want to work together.
We got a new sheriff in town.
We got a new sheriff in town, Mr. Dion Viventi. Most people do not realize how fortunate we are to have a man of his caliber, his background, his influence with FAA, DOT Aviation, DOT, an engineer on top of all of that. We are very fortunate, and that's the reason the entire thing has shifted, Mr. Belfield, from sitting back on their hands, as it were, until now we're going to have a state-of-the-art airport. And you didn't ask the question about passenger service. And a lot of people say, why don't we have passenger service here? Well, our proximity to RDU currently, am I going to spend $200 for a ticket that I can drive to RDU in 1 hour? Well, what happened with Charlotte becoming a different class airport, Class B, and then all of a sudden you had Gastonia and Monroe and Concord become regional feeder airports. Raleigh-Durham in the near future is going to become a higher designated airport with the FAA, and is foreseen to do that. And when that happens, you're going to have feeder airports, Sanford, Johnson County, Rocky Mount, and I foresee Discount Airlines in the future coming out of Rocky Mount and using us and having airline service and taking people to the hub in Charlotte, as it used to.
Well, it was great when we had it. I
You see, it
know.
was subsidized, and that subsidy went away in '72 by the federal government. And that's the reason the airlines nationwide had to completely restructure everything, and we got cut out of that. And that restructuring and the loss of the federal money in their entire grant program back in the '70s.
Yeah, I certainly hope it come back. I can remember when my wife was a national president, supreme bachelor of her sorority, she was flying out of here every week. And then it stopped, and she had to drive to Raleigh, because I could just take her out there and go back home.
It's very convenient.
Our time's up. Any other questions for us?
I hesitated to turn it over to Gary, but I'm glad I did. I've known Gary since elementary school, and I could feel the vibe that he had something to say there.
And we need to be
He's
excited.
our cheerleader.
That's right.
Yeah.
We thank y'all for being here, sir. Miss Wells, excuse me.
We'll see you on the next trip.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for coming.
All right.
See you, thank you.
Greg's here.
Oh, okay. You just might want to notify me if one slide out. Okay, great presentation. The next presentation, is item number 6, which is a resolution that we've been asked to support. And Bobby Lieberman, we'll turn it over to you, sir. Pleased to have you here today. Come on up to the podium.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, good.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Cool.
What you have is a resolution of support for the DOT to consider US 264 through the southern portion of Nash County a scenic byway. It's approximately 11 miles. It has 2 interchanges, 2 bridges that cross Turkey Creek, 2 bridges that cross Buckdean's Road, and 5 other bridges that allow various roads to cross over US 264. If you've driven this section of roadway recently, I hope you've noticed just how beautiful the area is through there. The wooded areas, the creeks, just everything that, other counties can't claim that they have on an interstate, because it is designated as a future interstate. So, some things that would come with US 264 becoming a scenic byway are, no new outdoor advertising signs would be allowed to be erected. And current ones, all lawfully erected outdoor advertising signs shall become non-conforming and would be purchased when money was to be available. It would not change anything about how we maintain the roadway or anything like that, or limit it for future funding. And that's about all I have to say about it.
Okay.
Kind of cut and dry. You want it?
Now, this is,
Fred.
I didn't quite realize there were 11 miles of 264 located in Nash County, but apparently so.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And Bob, I'm not sure I quite caught, now the advertising signs you're speaking of are the private individual signs, not the ones that DOT support and have some directional entity involved in it, where you have restaurants where you have fuel and stops and so forth, they will
Correct,
still
yeah.
be there.
Yeah, the logo sign program that the DOT maintains would still be there.
Right. Just, and I normally, the commissioners ask questions first, but since I'm on a roll, I'll finish, did turn it over to y'all, I apologize. The new interstates that we build, do we not allow private outdoor advertising signs along those routes?
We do through our outdoor advertising program.
Right.
They apply for a permit and would have to come to the county for building permits and such, and, those are still allowed. But if a section is deemed a scenic byway, we want to keep it more, less commercial in appearance.
I got you. I'm just not familiar with the scenic byway part of it, I guess.
Yeah, the way it's worded, it says that the NC Scenic Byway Highway System was established to provide the public with the opportunity to travel on system of roads featuring the intrinsic qualities of North Carolina. So the forested section, the creeks, and
Is that designation generally initiated by DOT, or is it initiated by the county which it goes through, or potentially the city it goes through?
anyone can recommend them. I believe this one was brought to the department by Bill Johnson, a former employee, I believe. So he's requesting it and we're pursuing it because it's just a beautiful section of roadway.
Other questions from commissioners?
So basically, this is for beautification.
No, sir, it's already beautiful. There will be, we did some tree trimming through there last year, and we will be doing the planting of some flowering trees coming forward. But we don't have any big plans to put any big wildflower beds or anything like that at the moment.
Lady commissioners, any questions? Seeing none.
I have one question.
Staff questions?
Without the scenic byway designation, in order to get a billboard, doesn't it have to be within a certain number of feet from an existing business?
I'm not sure about the existing business, but I know there are stipulations about distance away from ramps
From ramp?
and from other billboards.
Other billboards.
Other billboards, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Part of 64 on the way to the beach, evidently, it didn't have to meet any standard
Yeah,
for 10 miles through there anyway.
yeah.
Other questions? And Bobby, this is time sensitive where you need this adopted, today, I'm sure.
It would be
You
much
be-
appreciated.
Okay. All right, if you had more questions, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the resolution as written.
Adopt the resolution as printed.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Wells, I'll second to that motion.
Second.
Have a second by Commissioner Leggett. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Any opposed by like sign? Motion carries, and the resolution is adopted, Mr. Lublin.
Thank you. Thank
And
you
while
for your
you're
time.
here, we thank you for everything you do for Nash County. We don't see you often, but we worry you a lot, and we thank you for what you do.
My phone is always on. Give me a call.
Yes, sir.
Should we take a 5-minute break, 10-minute break? Whatever
Uh,
break.
I'll split the difference. We'll take a 7.5-minute break. How about that, man? Call us back in session at this time, and we had worked our way down to item number 7, and, I see Mr. Hill got word that we were on break and waiting for him, so, item number 7 is the approval for permitting of a yard waste disposal site at the landfill, and Mr. Hill, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just remind the board that in a previous session, we've discussed corrective action we need to take at the solid waste facility, the landfill. And of course, we're able to handle 2 of those 3 items, one being the pondage of water on the old MSW cap. And that's a problem with that we are now getting quotes on, and our engineers met the fellow at the landfill and probably will meet another vendor or 2 to give a quote. But anyway, that's a relatively straightforward issue. The second of the 2 concerns or issues had to do with what you would typically have to do when you leave an area, and that's the C&D area. When we expanded into the new area, we have a closed portion. It's not a permanent closure. It's, I think, what the engineer refers to an intermediate closure, which just means landscaping and seeding to prevent erosion. We can handle those 2 items in this year's budget under post-closure. Not a problem. What I come to you before today is then the third part was had some option to it. The state simply said you need to remove those 3 piles of yard waste which have accumulated over the last several years. One's in our disaster area that's reserved for disasters, for hurricanes, storms, and we certainly need to keep that clear before next, or get it clear before next fall, or hopefully even later than then, but have it clear in the event we have a storm. Second area, it has to do with moving the yard waste, probably 10,000 cubic yards or so up near the front in order to allow for that expansion of the C&D landfill. And then the third was what PLT, the construction company, found in the footprint of the expansion and had to move the mulch and yard waste and partially decayed material to just across the landfill path. Having said all that, we got a lot of yard waste that the state says you've got to move out of there. We could move it, and we have discussed this in great detail and discussed it some with the commissioners about moving it, but hauling costs would be $5 a yard just to haul, and probably another $4 or $5 for tipping fees. So it gets really high up into the $200,000 bracket just to get it off the premises. We thought what would be a more long-term permanent solution to handling yard waste, assuming we need to continue taking yard waste, would be to permit our own, what the state calls inert land debris clearing area or yard waste facility, probably about 7-8 acres maybe in space. So I will now introduce our engineer to answer any questions. Craig Fortner, you've met him before. He's with Vance Moore's group, Garrett Moore Engineering out of Cary. They've been our engineers for a long time, know the landfill very, very well, and would talk about the permitting process, which is certainly more extensive at the tune of approximately $80,000 to just permit a yard waste facility, not to mention the construction part that would, of course, require quotes or bids at that point in time when we get there.
Would you describe, Mr. Chip,
Go ahead, sir.
would you describe when you say yard waste, what are you really talking about?
Limbs, tree stumps, debris that you would see from fallen trees during storms or just when folks are land clearing an area, but a lot of it goes into our 9 convenience centers. So we pick up a lot of folks cleaning up their yards, whether they're pruning bushes, tree limbs, or even trees, whole trees, but cutting it up in 2 or 3 foot sections, but they end up in our container and then end up at the landfill. So it's really yard debris, limbs, tree limbs, that kind of thing.
Have you thought about so that the area would last maybe longer if they were ground up? Rather than burying all that, because it's gonna take up a lot more space doing it that way.
Yeah, I have, and we have, and we're continuing that. As a matter of fact, the chairman mentioned that, and I believe you mentioned that last time, and just before the meeting. I said, we need to revisit that idea, even with the yard waste facility, the cost of what a stump grinder would be, and how much that would, like a compactor, reserve years of space. In other words, it makes sense that chips would take up a lot less space and compact much better than heavy limbs and that kind of thing. So I think that's something we revisit, the stump grinder.
Yeah. Question. During a hurricane or when you have a whole lot extra, then we might bring in a tub grinder, just to try to reduce the amount of waste going into the LCID landfill. But in normal operations, it shouldn't be that great of a, but you're right, the more you grind, the less airspace you
We do bring in a tub grinder, exactly like Mr. Lamb said, sometimes from the city of Rocky Mountain, sometimes those large tub grinders that are already out there on contract with nearby counties or municipalities. Also, we are allowed to curtain burn sometimes. That's a limited sort of permission we get, but often we'll get that during storms, curtain, and managed burning of debris during storms like that.
You ever seen a tub grinder on your gov deals, Mr. Booth?
Good question, Bud.
I will say with the layout that we've proposed thus far, it's between 6 and 7 acres, and that would accommodate your typical year, excepting a storm, for your typical year's volume for about 20 years. In this same location, we have the potential to double that footprint, effectively at least doubling your capacity without grinding, but certainly it does reduce the volume. It does extend the life that you do have.
It may be hard to make the numbers work there.
Perhaps.
Yeah, that cost benefit.
But that's something that I would love to see. Grinding it rather than just packing it.
So with, The state typically has us grind the waste about once a year, and it's to the tune of about $50,000, is that pretty what
It
you're
can
seeing?
be, it sure can be.
Um,
Pretty
That's
expensive.
contracted out, so.
Then the problem, what to do with all the chips?
That is the ultimate problem, is what's the end for the chips, or the unchipped waste, where's it go?
You would think there'd be a market for them, whether it's energy burning, send them to Europe, but it's not enough to send to Europe.
Anything else, sir?
The
Question.
request is to pursue the permitting process. We've never had a yard waste facility as such. We've had yard waste, and then we'd had to grind it, or we'd just let it continue to collect, but never a specific facility permitted as an inert debris site. So that is our recommendation to pursue this. And again, it's going to be a costly process. I think it could be $80,000 in the permitting phase alone. That blows my mind, but you say it could be. And then the construction phase, ballpark, and you want to stay away from too many figures here because you don't even have the specs developed for it, but you could be talking 250,000, 275 on construction. I just thought you needed to have a ballpark figure knowing what, because you certainly don't want to permit one if you're not going to pursue building or constructing a yard waste facility. If you have any technical questions, this is the guy, the engineer.
So you're asking us to vote to allow permitting?
To permit, to go through the permitting process with the state to allow a designated area on our already existing property at the landfill for about 7-8 acres, which I think would last a long, long time.
20 years is your current acceptance rate.
That is our recommendation, that we go forward. We're gonna have costs associated with dealing with the existing and future yard waste if we don't. So we just feel like this will provide another service for the citizens. They can, go ahead.
Excuse me.
No, you go ahead.
I should have said, though, I'm not asking for money, a special allocation of money. It is in the reserve
Yeah, we've got it.
solid waste account, the enterprise fund. So it's there for that purpose, to do things at the solid waste facility. It's there just for solid waste.
Well, I think we need to look to the future because weather patterns have changed and they've already predicted that we have anywhere from 3 to 7 major storms during the hurricane season. And they can be very devastating and have a lot of debris and trees and limbs and all those things going down, which that's one thing that drives my mind toward
Yes.
cutting it up, and because we're probably going to have a lot of it.
Unfortunately, and we were just really lucky last year when that big one hit down towards the North Carolina, South Carolina line. It turned south instead of north, but Kinston wasn't so lucky. That close by really did catch it down that way.
Well, still, I think I heard one of you say that the 7 or 8 acres would give us 20 years. Did you also say you had an adjoining site of an equal amount that would put us somewhere to go for the next 20 years?
Yes, sir. So what I've looked at initially is that first
Okay.
20 years.
So the numbers we're looking at is for the first, nothing to do with the second, other than we have
Well,
room there for it.
When you talk about permitting fees,
Mhm.
it's not gonna change if I permit a 6-acre landfill versus a 12-acre landfill.
Okay.
The cost difference is gonna be negligible.
So would we permit it all?
I would go after it all.
Right, I would think so. Well, when you look at it like that, you know, our land probably value even at $5,000, I don't know what we pay for land, I'm sure quite a bit less than that, but you're talking about $2,000 a year. I don't know how we could ever switch over to a tub grinder and make it look correct, if you look at it from a feasible standpoint, rather than just an environmental standpoint. And of course, then you got the cost of getting rid of the chips, so it looks like the tub grinders you use during a disaster like we've been doing potentially, but just thinking about the numbers, but that's y'all's decision to make. Any other questions?
Unless we have a lightning strike.
Understood, sir. Yep. And we are, request approval, so I would, entertain a motion to move forward with this permitting.
Mr. Chairman, I move to move forward with the permitting process.
All right,
Second.
motion made by Commissioner Leggett, second by Commissioner Bellfield. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, on item number 8, did you have something else, Mr. Hill?
I'm just gonna say, I think, Donna, the money we'd ask to be appropriated in the new fiscal year, is that correct? Yeah, we would move it before the new fiscal year, and that was your concern. And of course, when you get towards the construction, we'll have to most likely come back to the board for formal bids, awarding, that kind of thing.
That's correct.
Sounds good, thank you, sir. I apologize, I did not mention at the beginning of the meeting that we do have 2 members out today. Of course, Mr. Outlaw and Mr. Combs, and they are on excused absence, even though the reason may be questionable, but they have an excused absence. And it's unusual for us to have 2 commissioners out at the same time, because we do have great attendance records. But they were both out for a very good reason, all kidding aside. And I do apologize for not mentioning that when we began. But we, of course, still have a quorum with 5 members present out of a 7-member board. Moving on to item number 8, which is budget amendments. Ms. Wood, I'll turn it over to you this time.
Okay, I have 3 budget amendments, to hopefully get us to the end of the year. The first one is with
Say
the.
that every meeting today.
Well, we only have about 3 more weeks, I think. The first one is with the library, and this budget amendments to budget a grant award to Braswell Memorial Library. It's from the North Carolina Department of Cultural Resources. It's LSTA Cardinal Migration Grant from the Federal Library Services and Technology Act. Nash County is the pass-through agency. It's $12,550. There's no county funds required. The next item is with medical examiner. This amendment is to budget additional funds for medical examiner fees for fiscal year 18-19, requesting $10,000 from fund balance in anticipation of excess fees. And the final item is with social services. This budget amendment is to increase the 4D cooperative agreements based on rising number of child support cases with court fees. And the additional 66% of the federal funds will be received to offset expenses. So it's $5,940.
Okay. Any questions on the budget amendment for today? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the 3 budget amendments.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wells, there's a second. Second by Commissioner Bellfield. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Budget amendment stand approved, and you can bring all you want to, Ms. Woods, as long as that statement is there like it's in the first one today. Next item on the agenda is item number 9, which is board appointments. Stacey, turn that over to you, ma'am.
Yes, we have 2 that we wanted to bring back to the board today for your approval. One is for the ABC board. We talked about Mr. Jerry Harris's term having expired. We did get an appointment nomination from Commissioner Leggett suggesting that Mr. Butch Mull be appointed to this board, and we provided you with a copy of Mr. Mull's application in your packet.
Mr. Leggett, you want to add anything to that?
Mr. Mull's a local businessman, very involved in the community. and I felt like he would definitely be an addition to this board.
He does come from the same commissioner district that the one that, term expired came from, if I'm not mistaken. I know Jerry lives out of Birchwood. I'm not sure where Mr. Hall lives at, Moore, he lives at, but probably in Nashville somewhere.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'd entertain a motion for approval.
Yes, sir. I make the motion to, appoint Mr. Mull to the ABC board.
Motion there, second by Ms. Richardson. Any questions on that motion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. That will fulfill the need for him to meet a deadline, I think, Stacy, of some upcoming training or something.
That's correct. I'll get that information to Mr. Murray.
Okay, then you had one more.
And then the next one is for the Nash County Jury Commission. As you know, we're trying to fill the seat for Dr. Reed Parrott Jr. And I did have an opportunity to speak with our clerk of court, Linda Thorne, and she has recommended L.R. Bass Jr. to serve on the jury commission. She spoke with him directly, and he said that he agreed and would be honored to serve on this.
May I ask a question? How many members on that jury? Is it just 3?
I think just 3.
Yeah. Mhm. Well, my next question is, are there any minorities on any of those 3? I know it has in the past been way, as far as I could remember, way back. I know.
Stacy, you know who our current 3 members would be?
20 years ago, I remember.
I don't know. To my
Remember
knowledge,
when
this is
Richard
the only
Cooper
one that the
served on that?
commissioners appoint to the jury commission. Is that correct? The other,
I only recall appointing one in my term, yes, in my terms here.
Yeah, I thought.
So do we know who appoints the other ones?
I have no idea.
I believe the Superior Court judge, senior resident, and maybe the clerk of court.
Well, I know the clerk of court was involved in the.
I think she's got an appointment also.
Yeah.
Mr. Belfield, can I get you that answer at our next meeting?
That'd be fine.
Okay. All right, staff will get that to us, so just advise all the commissioners how they actually get appointed and who the current members are would be good. Good question, Mr. Belfield.
Did we carry the motion?
We hadn't had a motion yet. Any other questions on this, Mr. Bass? I think it's a great pick myself. I know Mr. Bass a little bit. I'd entertain a motion for approval then.
Move approve.
Have a motion by Ms. Richardson and Ms. Wells at the same time. I'll take Ms. Richardson for the motion and Ms. Wells for the second. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. All right, item number 10 is elected a board member for voting member at the NACA-CO conference. Who are our members that are attending?
Mr. Belfield, Ms. Wells.
Ms. Wells, okay. Have y'all discussed that between you
No,
two?
Madam Chair, I would appoint Fred, I would ask to appoint Fred Belfield as the.
Okay, I'll take that as a motion to appoint Mr. Belfield as our voting member. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Ms. Richardson. Any questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries.
Will you be the alternate? You'll be the alternate?
Are we to have an alternate as well?
Yes.
And I missed that?
It's on the form. We don't have to vote on it, I don't think.
Okay.
No, and if for some reason, that I couldn't serve and she's there, that can be taken care of there at the registration desk.
Okay. All right, well, since y'all the two going, we'll certainly put her, Ms. Wells down as the alternate. Any other questions on that? All right, we're now on item number 11, which Commissioner Outlaw normally handles, but I'll just go down the list, and of course, we would ask you to report. any items, any significant items, and, or if your board hasn't met, just state they haven't met. District number 1 is Ms. Richardson.
We haven't met since we last met.
Have not met, okay. District number 2, Mr. Belfield.
Okay, two other committees that I serve on, Farmers Market, we'll be meeting Friday, 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
For a breakfast meeting. Upper Coastal Plain Council of Government, we meet tomorrow at 5:30. And I will say this, at our last meeting, we did approve their budget. The budget for 1920, $10,755,613. And there's, because a lot of that money comes from the federal government, some from the state, and the General Assembly has not approved their final budget yet, but this is what we anticipate.
Right.
Between the two, state and federal. Tar River Transit, we met last week, yeah. And we approved the fiscal year 2020 Tar River Transit budget. And we also updated the drug and alcohol testing policy for all the drivers. The DMV saw into our testing policy that we need to update it to the point where we test a little bit more than what we had in there. And we have done that. I have it here. If anybody, any of the staff members or the commissioners want to see it, I'd be glad to share it with you. One other thing that we did, two other things. One is that we're gonna replace 10 vans that most of them have up there, anywhere from 170,000 to 290,000 miles on. But those vans will have to go to the Department of Transportation up there where they will advertise them. And if you're interested in any of them, you can put in your bid. You can go online and put in your bid. We also updating the bus stop signs. These will now have the schedules on them for each route, so that when you go to one of the stops, you know what time you expect the bus to come, and what time you expect to get where you are going. So these will be updated, and in fact, they've already started updating. So this is what they look like. This is not in color, but this is what they look like. So that's where we are. We've been having a lot of meetings. And we got one tonight at 5 o'clock to deal with. I was told it was one thing on the phone, and I was just talking with Stacy, who's also on there. It's another thing. It's dealing with personnel matter, and I was told it was training for the new board members. I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to get there tonight because I do have some other commitment. This is a call meeting, and not a regular scheduled meeting. So that's my report for the committees that I serve on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Belfield. Mr. Combs is District 3. I did not get a report from Mr. Combs, so I'll move to Commissioner 4. Give me 1 minute. District 4, we are still waiting, Ms. Leggett, as you know, for a letter from the hospital. I think you did have some training. You want to say anything about your training or any meetings that you might have attended?
Yes, so, last week I attended their, had a casual meeting with their nominating committee. Just kind of more of meet and greet, orientation, very good meeting. Ms. Lou attended with me as well. I will say that, in meeting, their committee, they are very passionate about their new goals they've set out on. Sustainability, financial sustainability of the hospital, quality and deliverables to the customers, and then being about a part of the community. So it's very exciting, and they're really working hard to meet those goals. Also, I serve as a citizen member of the Nash County Farmers Market Board, and I did want to say that they've got lots of exciting things going on down there, and their Tuesday market is going on. They have a Tuesday afternoon market from 4 to 7 p.m. going on, and the last 2 weeks and even tomorrow, they've got live music and a food truck. So that's kind of fun for the community. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We look forward to getting that letter so we can formalize that. Wayne Outlaw is on the Community College Board. Ms. Wells, as you, anything you want to report about the Community College
Yes,
Board?
they asked me if I would report to him. We have had 30-some applications for Dr. Carver's job. The committee's going through those applications, cutting them down to about 5. We're hoping by September to have someone in place.
Oh, really? Okay.
And
Okay.
while I'm here, just want to go ahead and do my next two. Turning Point meets Thursday night, and Step Boots Wednesday morning.
Okay, we hadn't had a meeting on those, okay?
Mhm.
Wayne did report the RPO had not met, and the broadband committee has not met since his last report last month. That moves us to Commissioner 7, which is myself, to Travel Tourism Development Authority. Of course, met in May. I reported that, at the end of May, what we did there. The funding letters have gone out, they have received them, apparently, because I've had numerous folks thank me, Donna, for getting the letter, and of course, a couple of questions about the last paragraph we added in the letter, but we explained that. We just, let them, when we, sent out the award letters this year for the people that, were funded, we let them know that we were using fund balance, some this year, something we didn't particularly like to do, and that, next year, we'd like them to look a little bit closer at what their actual needs were as it relates to what they had gotten in the past, simply because we had quite a few of them that asked for more money this year, which is one reason why we got in fund balance. So some of them, I think, took it to mean to not come back next year, which is not what we meant. We just meant to not continue to ask for more every year, so we can maintain. We like to spend no more than what we take in each year, is what we generally try to do. The MPO did meet that same day, that afternoon, which we had a long second meeting that month, and I did not get over there. I haven't got my minutes yet from that meeting, so I'm not sure what went on for that. The Joint School Board Committee is inactive, as I stated last time, and we have not met again. And then the new school ad hoc committee has not had any meetings since the one we had at the Nash Community College, which was the presentation, at Northern Nash, which was the presentation that the school board has got doing this study for attendance zones and that kind of thing. We will expect to get that back before too much longer. That's all I have to report there, and I don't think we have a reason for a closed session. Anything come up, Mr. Durham? Okay. Mr. Lamb, did you have anything you wish to report?
No.
Any commissioner got anything else you wish to bring up?
I just wanted to ask
Mr.
a
Miller?
question. In funding the different agencies, programs, activities, I know.
Tourism Development Authority. Yes, sir.
Tourism and Development Authority.
Yes, sir.
If for some reason they don't have it canceled because of bad weather or something like that, those funds go back into the,
Yeah,
The
what
treasury.
happens is, I'll use an example, maybe one you're familiar with, the Down East Fighting Class
that's
last
exactly
year.
one, that's what I'm driving
As
at.
we know, we had a lot of them, the same amount of money we had been, Donna helped me with the numbers, at $60,000,
40,000.
$40,000. We allotted last year, the thing was canceled. What we asked them to do is either return the money or to agree that the money would be used for this year's Classic. They took the latter approach. They kept the funds because they had already drawn it down, but they didn't make an additional request this time, and they're using that money in September in the Classic.
So they
for
didn't
this
make
year.
one for this coming in?
They did not, but that's an agreement that we had worked out between the board and their requestees last year. Either needed to return the money or to agree to use it for this year, and they chose to use it for this year. And our board
They
approved that.
probably had spent some of it for.
They had spent about $5,000-6,000.
Yeah, promotion
That's
and different
correct.
things, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but that's the way we handled that one. Each individual one, it doesn't happen frequently, it's happened a couple of times, but we look at it like that and kind of work with them to see what works for them best. Good question, though. Other questions, commissioners or any staff member?
I actually do. I do have one question. Donna,
You didn't do that fast enough, Chair.
are you comfortable that we will not need any budget amendments between now and June 30th?
Today, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
I don't need any budget amendments.
Okay, well, what I'll let the board know is, instead of adjourning, I would go ahead and ask that you recess. And if we discover there's cost overruns in some department,
Well, for
we-
recess, I need a time specific.
no, I'm not asking you to recess, just go ahead and adjourn.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, but we will, there may be a need to have a special call meeting, which requires 48 hours notice, towards the end of next week. We'll need at least 4 of you here if that happens, but hopefully we can avoid it altogether.
But next week I'll be gone the whole week out of town.
Okay. Hopefully we won't need to have a special call meeting.
Let me think what Mr. Bellfield would vote against, and we'll call one next week, take care of that. Any other comments? If not, we stand adjourned. Excuse me, I can't do that. I need to call for a motion to
I
adjourn.
make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
have a motion by Mr. Wells, second by Mr. Bellfield. Any questions on that motion? I know it's not. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, by like sign.
Thank you.
Motion carries.